we're going to continue watching the board meeting. I'm finding it a little bit more interesting than usual, probably because there's different players. We have a whole new cast. We have Kelsey, Presser, and all these people I've never seen before. So it's adding a little bit more of dynamic interest to hear what's going on. And we have the governor who's appointed some people that ATU likes, and I don't know, maybe there is a potential for something to change, you know. I wish I wasn't such an awful cynic about everything, but you know, everything I've seen in my life has led me to this awful cynicism where I just don't see any kind of altruism at all anywhere, and especially not with government. So I don't know. We'll keep watching and see how this goes. So there's John leaving. Remember, I was pretty pissed that they only gave him 3 minutes. I find that insulting.
People who want to testify: Becky Heron and Susan Nowak. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, President Warner and the board. I'm Susan Nowak. I am a 17-year resident of Tualatin, and I'm here to say thank you on behalf of Tualatin, but I'd like to give you a quick background of why I'm here. I am...
But you can disregard that one, okay?
Okay. Can I have 2 minutes?
No, please.
I wrote a speech and it's not too, I'm just going to chat for a minute. I retired 10 years ago and found a niche in my new career and new world as being a community activist and a senior advocate. I am definitely a senior citizen, and I have become a voice in our community for our seniors.
All right.
For those who don't speak up or can't speak up, I make sure that I do. And I do that in a way because I chair the Tualatin Aging Task Force. And some of you might be familiar with us. We have a very loud voice in Tualatin. We've worked over the last several years with Trimet specifically on projects in our community. I got started on the committee when we were negotiating to bring Ride Connection in, daytime hours. It's been there for about 5 years now. It's a hugely successful program, and we are so appreciative of having it. It has given our seniors and our residents with disabilities or no mobility to get out and about during the day. We've seen an increase in our senior center because of it. It's a wonderful staff, and we're very appreciative of that. That got me started. Then we tackled the post office because the U.S. Postal Service, in their wisdom, wanted to move our downtown location to the industrial area, which was not accessible for anyone. And the task force did a grassroots effort in the community with the chamber and the city and the city staff, and they did not move because we lobbied hard and strong. So we have a voice. Our voice is now being used to work very closely with Trimet and Metro on the Southwest Corridor, the Bridgeport project for light rail, and what we're most excited about is Bus Line 96, and that's why I'm here. We have had meetings with Linda Simmons and Tom Mills and Jennifer Cruiser and people from Metro who have willingly come to talk to our small group. We're 15 strong, but we appreciate the partnership. We appreciate the fact that you're so forthcoming with your information. You heard us and you listened and you took action. And
so she's a Trimet booster. I've never seen her before, don't know anything about her. She's obviously pro light rail, Southwest Corridor.
We couldn't be more thankful because what you've done when 96 extends its routes for non-peak hours is that you have given an opportunity not only to our community but to our workforce to get in and out of Tualatin in non-peak hours, and it's vital for the health and growth of our community that we have this, and we want to say thank you because it was
Nicely done.
Yeah, that was, that's pretty, they've been getting a very pathetic service in Tualatin in all these years. Was that one of the ones that have been changed? Let me look at that. Is that schedule been changed already? I'm gonna look that up real quick because I'm curious. Because she's thanking them, so she's thanking them for what? Let's see. Route map and schedules. Bus lines. Bus line 96. Let's see what's going on with 96. Okay, schedules. No service Saturday, no service Sunday. Alright, 2 Commerce Circle. I don't see anything here, do you? I mean, it's the same crappy, I don't know, you can't see that, but it's the same crappy service. It's a split shift service, and the last one leaves downtown Portland at 7:30. So what's he thanking them for? They haven't changed anything yet. So why are you thanking them? I don't get it.
wow. I will tell you that's unusual. I'm a talker.
Thank you for your comments. Did you have a comment you want to make? Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. All right, thank you, yes. Ms. Heron.
My name is Becky Heron. I work for Propel Insurance, which is located in downtown Portland. And I'm here actually just as a huge thank you to for you putting in the Hot Pass. We provide our employees with a Hot Pass free of charge.
Okay, so we have a couple of shills. Really, you don't need to thank government, all right? You don't thank them. These are your tax dollars. They're supposed to go to us. All right, now the first woman, I don't know what the hell she's thanking them for, because this is the current schedule, and 96, and I don't see any difference here. So what's she thanking them for? I don't get it. So she's a shill. Now, who's this woman? She works at an insurance company, and she's thanking Trimet for the Hot Pass.
We've been doing it for a long time, or a Trimet pass of some sort. We have about 80 employees in Portland. We have about 40 that use the transit system on a regular basis, so about half, which is great. And the Hot Pass makes my life much easier.
Why?
I can get online and load their passes, and it's instantaneous.
Oh, okay.
I can even do it last minute if I need to. When I have a brand new employee that starts the first day, they say they want a pass, I can have it to them that day. Granted, I realize the Trimet office is very close to where my office is, but it still makes my life easier. We were one of the early adopters of it. We've been using it since last September. My employees really appreciate it, and I have several that even use C-Tran, and we're now able to load their passes that way as well. So it was really just a testimony to say thank you.
Yeah, it's bizarre when you see these kind of people showing up. You know how I feel about the Hot Pass. I'm not in favor of it. I know there are things that are good, like the fare capping and that, but I'm not in favor of these government tracking systems. And don't forget that eventually Trimet will be phasing out everything but this Hot Pass, and I'm adamantly against that. I mean, they're just starting right now.
Thank you. So kudos to your firm and to you. Thank you very much for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for what you do, Warner.
All right. Well, that concludes
That's it.
Our public forum today. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for all your comments.
So nobody
with that,
showed up.
We're going to go right into our regular business meeting. So I'll call the business meeting, the regular business meeting of the Trimet Board of Directors for April 25th, 2018 to order. And the first thing on the agenda is the board reports. And the first board report is the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, or TEC, as we know it.
Dr. Bethel.
Dr. Bethel?
Dr. Bethel is finally going off the board, and can't say that I'm sad to see him go. He's been on this board way too long. And the thing that I reminded about Bethel is how he treated Jensen. Wayne Jensen, those of you who've been around a little bit, and how he, I'm not look, I don't like any of them, but I really don't like him. Also, Bethel's a homophobe.
Report for us.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last TIAC meeting, the Trimet staff provided an overview and update on Trimet's business plan. Trimet Director of Outreach and Marketing walked the TIAC members through the initial timeline for transitioning paper tickets out of Safeway and Kroger locations and making them available to community partners and nonprofits through Access Transit and the Institutional Partner Program, as well as them still being available at some of the TBMs. We also walked through the new draft charter for the expansion.
Well, he's not looking good at all, is he? Ooh. I know he uses a wheelchair now.
The TIAC set to convene in May, which is going to be a great addition to TIAC, as well as to what's going to be able to help with the transparency and involvement and things for general Trimet overall. Staff also provided an update on the cross-agency efforts to successfully launch the new low-income fare program this July. Also shared the job description for the new community outreach staff position and asked TIAC members to spread the word about the opportunity. That concludes the report for this past month. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to entertain.
Thank you. Any questions?
Nothing there of value.
Thank you, Dr. Bethel. Appreciate that. Well, let's move on to the Finance and Audit Committee. Director Prosser.
Oh,
Okay, the Finance and Audit.
he's another one that's going bye-bye. Another one of them. His soft manner. He's really a sock puppet. I'm not gonna miss him. Wouldn't miss any of them if you want to know the truth. I don't really like any of these board members. Stovall is the only one that has like a personality that I kind of like, even though he's a blowhard. He's kind of a likable personality, at least. He's the only one.
Audit Committee did not meet this morning because we had our hearing with the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, TSCC. Under state law, TSCC is responsible for reviewing and approving all budgets of entities located in Multnomah County, or for regional entities or headquarters are in Multnomah County. So that includes Trimet. They had 10 questions that they provided to the board and staff, pretty wide-ranging, dealing with fast pass, cost recovery from fares,
We already heard this.
measures to improve on-time performance,
Move him up. Go up.
migration and demographic changes. That was a panel of several people, including from
Yeah.
Greater Opportunity.
Still blabbering. Go up. Go up. Go up.
Ridership report.
Oh, okay.
We'll check in.
We
with,
want to get hit. This is Kelsey's general manager report.
It was a good discussion, good information, so that's it.
Questions, comments? I guess I would just say on the growth issue, I was in Bend over the weekend and had an opportunity to speak with them and learned that Bend is now the fastest growing city on the entire West Coast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. Thank you, Director Prosser. Well, let's move right on to the General Manager's report. Mr. General Manager, you want to introduce the item?
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. In my General Manager's report this morning, there will be several areas I'd like to cover with you. One is review the March ridership report. We'll check in with, get Dee Brookshire to come up and view our last quarterly finance report. Give you a more of an enhanced and critical timeline of key issues, particularly coming at the board here with the Southwest Corridor project, a little bit more than this morning at the TSCC hearing you heard about.
See how focused they are on that light rail project? It really bothers me that this is taking away so much energy and funding from existing service. It's not needed. It's not needed. It's a gentrification project, just like Division.
We'll also outline some of the recent developments in our low-income fare program, and we'll give some comments on the 100-day plan that I'm working towards, as you mentioned earlier. And I'd also like to take a couple minutes to recognize a couple employees here that have done just some tremendous efforts at work and in the community. So, firstly, in terms of the ridership report, Trimet provided about 8.3 million rides. That's down about 2.5% over March of last year. The riders took more than just over a million trips, 1.1 million trips by bus, which reflects a slight decline of about 1.7%.
Still losing riders.
Bus ridership dropped a little more than 3% as we kind of break down the numbers a little bit further. There was a slight uptick in the weekend ridership overall, but essentially statistically flat right now. We'll see some more, I think, enhancements. We put more bus service in place, etc. So that will unfold later. The frequent bus day service is down 3.5% year to date.
Yikes.
We did see a much smaller dip on the weekend frequent service of less than a percentage point, so that was better news. Trips on the frequent service bus lines, they make up about 54% of all the bus rides. We provide about 750,000.
Why do they? I don't get that. I mean, why do they have to split this idea of bus lines, frequent service, and other bus lines? I mean, frequent service, yeah. I mean, you can't just have frequent service lines. You have to have other lines too. So I don't know why they keep breaking down. Well, frequent service did this, but regular bus did that. I mean, I don't get it. There's something there that I'm missing.
1,000 weekly trips on Max. That's a decrease of about 4% over this time last year.
Wow, 4%.
The weekday ridership on the Orange Line dipped in March by about 3.4%.
3.4.
However, the weekend ridership increased by about 6% over the same period last year. We have about 77,000 weekly trips on West, and as was related to the TSCC report, this is a concern for us, the drop in ridership. They're down more than 13%.
Wow.
In this particular case,
Jesus.
We also have had some significant rail work going on, rail industry called work blocks, if you will. So we know that's been...
Yeah, West had all kinds of interruptions. I follow this daily, so I know. West has all of a sudden become unreliable, which is shocking because it was the most reliable form of transit Trimet had. That's 13% decrease. Jesus.
Part of it, but this is still very much on the watch and concern list for us. And as I mentioned at the last board meeting, we are undertaking a bunch of extra marketing efforts here to say, how do we, with some of the employers who've left the area and their employees who use the system, how can we shore that up? So a lot of work's going on in that area.
That was always a dumb idea. Anybody that knows Trimet knows that West was always a stupid idea. But they did it because the money was there, and that's how these technocracies function. If they can get the money, they're going to do it because they want the money. Okay, that's what they want. And now they've got us stuck in with West for 20 years. This is why you don't want to fund these rails. Because once they put it in, it's guaranteed to stay in forever. And that's going to suck money away from other needs.
Next, I'd maybe like to call up Dee Brookshire, if you could, and I'll just cover off the financial highlights from the last quarter's performance.
Here comes Dee.
Yeah, please. Doug, I just want to follow up on kind of the ridership. Of course, that's one of the key things one of the key metrics that as an agency, as a board, we look at and want to be cognizant of. As we look at, and I know we've looked at various points of information in regards to the decline. We have an understanding this decline that we're seeing is a national trend, and we can look at data all day long and try to analyze what we have going on. When I look at
it's a national trend with big exceptions. Okay, don't be fooled by this. There are cities that are increasing transit ridership.
There's sometimes, and I'm going to ask a question that we may not currently have the answer to, and let me add one more thing. Basically, as I have understood it, our decline is actually less than what we're seeing nationally, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these assumptions or comments that I'm making. Is there any type of notion that at some point, as an agency, we reach a capacity that then from there, and unless we do things that dramatically improve or increase capacity, we
That's interesting he brought that up, because he's right. I've been noticing this for a long time. It's not like the buses are full during the rush hours, and I'm sure people have given up trying to ride them. I mean, they don't have the capacity. He's exactly right. I think that's part of the story, and they don't talk about that, of course. They talk about, well, the housing prices and people are moved. But I do think he's right about this. I think that they've reached kind of a critical mass on how many people they can actually take, and all it takes is to be left behind twice in a row, and that person's not coming back to transit if they have an option. And I think this point is well taken, and I'm glad that he actually is bringing it up.
Essentially hit this peak and then we don't come back. And what I mean by that is, I primarily ride the Max, and at peak times, it's absolutely full.
Right.
I rode in this morning. There's a little bit more room, but as I ride back this afternoon, I can tell you that it's going to be standing room only, and that's consistently what I see. So the here to decline, I don't necessarily always see it when I ride. As a matter of fact, I was coming from the airport, I think it was last month at 11 o'clock at night, and I was surprised at how full the Max was even at 11 o'clock. And so to have the experience that I get when I ride.
Yeah, see, he's verifying what I agree. I think this is part of it. I absolutely do think he's right about this. And I just, as an observer, this is my observation, and he's hitting on this. And this is the first time I've heard it in any kind of official, you don't see it in any of the public transportation industrial complex consultants like Walker. You don't see Trimet talking about it. You don't see this point anywhere, okay? This is the first time I've seen anybody say this in any venue that I'm familiar with.
And of course, I'm riding the blue line between here and Gresham, which is probably the busiest portion of our entire system in regards to the Max. I mean, what I'm experiencing in actuality and what I'm hearing in these numbers, tend to not match up somewhat.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering if.
Yeah. Okay, we got your point. Now let's hear Supreme Leader answer.
Some of what we see is this peaking out of our system at those peak times, and then so the off peaks, you're not just going to see much of a rise, but then the peak times we see a potential decline because of the experience of not being able to grab a seat or something to that effect.
Right. Okay.
Well, maybe thank you. Maybe I provide a couple comments. The first one is our decreases for me are more of a softening than structural. I'm going to put West on the side for a second. I think that's more a deeper cut, if you will, over multiple years. But I think if compared to national trends, many agencies, or a number of agencies at least, are at the 10-15% type of ridership decline, somewhat we're actually seeing on the west side of things. So ours are in I'll call the 1 to 2% general range right now. So I think this is where HB...
The ridership has been flat for a long time. It has been flat, and he's not answering that question. He's skirting it. Notice how he's getting around that question.
2017 is going to very much help us on a number of fronts. One is we know we have pass-ups in some of our peak hours. These are some of the on the bus side. You can see just here in the numbers. That's going to help us a lot. And as soon as we can get there, we've got to place the orders, things of that nature. So that's one piece. The other one, I think, is also through the hop card. As we get this implemented, there'll be other things that we can do to help encourage ridership in some of those off-peak periods.
This is bullshit. He's trying to say the hop card is going to help ridership. That's ridiculous.
For those who historically have ridden the peak. We still have capacity on selective routes and a lot of parts of the day. So we need to try and shore some of that up, particularly off-peak periods. This is also, I think, why we need to still finish a lot of the work on reliability. So people can plan their time to eliminate some of the buffers of not knowing.
Right.
So that if we can continue to improve our precision,
Reliability is the most important thing if you want people. It's got to be reliable. You've got to show up within 5 minutes of the time that you're publishing. It's got to be reliable. If you can't be reliable, you've got nothing, okay? Nobody's going to ride it unless they have to. And Trimet reliability, their figures say one thing, but I listen to the calls. And I'm only listening to somewhere between 2 and 5% of them, and I hear lots of breakdowns and screw ups and problems, and so I know there's a ton of delays out there that I don't hear, but I know that it's systemic.
they can make choices with more precision on their end as well. So I think that'll give people some more confidence in maybe picking the edge of the windows outside some of those windows. And yes, as we over time get to the extension of the red line, like the Fairplex that we spoke a bit about this morning,
I don't understand how that changes anything. They've already got trains there. I don't understand how that's going to increase they've already got trains running to Fairplex. Okay, so you have to transfer. How does increasing the red change anything there? Unless they're going to double the amount of trains coming through the blue line. Are they going to actually increase the number of trains? Is there going to be like 20 or 30% more trains running now? That's what I don't understand.
With that will come some more rail cars, on the rail side specifically. So I think on a number of those fronts, yes, we're part of an industry challenge and phenomenon, and I think we will see ridership, I believe, come back. I don't think this is, to me, if I look at this on a long-term basis.
Well, of course he's going to say that. I mean, you got to remember they're not going to say anything that makes them look bad. We know these are phony meetings, and they always have an excuse for everything that happens. Of course he's going to say that. Ridership will come back. It will come back when the service gets reliable.
Having been in the private sector for many years, some 2% is not structural, but we want to take a long-term lens on the other services we need to put in place to give people more options on their terms, not ours. I think some of the other services, like 24-hour service that we spoke about today, that's going to open up an avenue of a market that we don't hit today. So I think we may have to look at ridership in other periods of the day, but I think we'll have to look at some of the tactics of the peak ridership, particularly on Max, over time, particularly on that blue line.
Please.
I appreciate that, Doug. And ultimately, my next comment is not a critique about what we're doing, although it is something that I think should draw our attention to looking at really what can we really do to affect the positive change. And what I mean by that is that as we look at our decline, which is slight in comparison to what's going on nationally, I also take a look at what we've done in the contrast to positively impact ridership. We haven't raised fares in 6+ years, I believe we're at now, maybe just at 6 years. So fares have been the same for...
Yeah, let's stop there and mention that when they did raise the fares, they matched the highest in the country. Okay, they were the highest in the country at the time. I doubt they're the highest in the country now, 6 years later. But they're still fairly high, especially for a single ticket ride down the street. It's still priced high. I mean, you can't go down the street for less than $2.50. That's a lot of money by public transportation standards. Let's make sure you understand that. Just because they haven't raised it in 6 years, 6 years ago, they raised it to the highest level that they could. So that's kind of a fraudulent argument there.
For 6 years. I mean, and based on what I sometimes hear, that should be something that should naturally increase ridership because, as we all know, things begin to become more expensive year in and year out, although the cost of actually taking a ride has stayed the same for almost 6 years. So that, in the natural sense, should be a positive. We increased the transfer time from 2 hours to 2.5 hours, which we were told by the advocates of that would increase and positively impact our ridership, which, I always say start with the end in mind. So I'd love to actually, if there's any way that we can measure the change, if there was a change or impact, I mean, it may be hard to do, but if we could measure the change or the impact of that 2.5 hour or the half-hour addition to the transfer time, that would be interesting to understand what we've implemented in the positive or just the overall impact from that. But as I look at those things, as I look at the concept of improved reliability, I mean, we've gone from 70 in the mid 70s up to over 90%. That's another positive change that, in my mind, based on what you just said, should positively impact ridership.
Yeah, well, he's thinking at this wrong, okay? Reliability, okay? Comfort. You know, raising the fare another, giving an extra half hour, that helps the economically disadvantaged people. Nobody's going to ride Trimet just because they get an extra half hour on the transfer. That was a move to help people that actually needed to pinch their pennies.
I mean, we have done some significant things, and then the hop pass in regards to, I don't think this gets mentioned enough, but the idea that we have the fare capping in place is a tremendous benefit to our riders and our stakeholders in regards to,
people, look, yeah, it's a benefit, but I happen to know the mind of the transit riders, and a lot of these people that are riding transit are going to have a lot of trouble with that hop, okay? They're not people that are sophisticated, all right? And you're moving them into something that's fairly sophisticated. That's not going to go over well for the people that are not sophisticated. I know that for a fact. You'd be surprised how many people are not sophisticated. Well, go ride some of the high-use runs and watch the people that get on the buses, okay? They're not sophisticated.
The decreased overall cost of transit, specifically, I think, for low-income riders, because they're generally the ridership that tends to have to buy it on a day-to-day basis. So as I look at the compilation of all of those positive changes, and still we have a negative.
He's making some valid points, but they're not the overriding issue as to why people aren't riding the system. Okay, I think that we have lots of examples of murders on the max, Gestapo-like fare checking on the max. We have all these things happening out there. This police state thing is not inviting. I don't even ride it, okay? And I had a free pass because I don't want to deal with all of that, man. He's not looking at the actual picture in terms of how convenient, how many times you have to show your pass to fare inspectors. He's looking at these obscurities, the hot pass fare capping. Nobody's going to think about that, especially the unsophisticated riders. The change in fare, nobody's going to think about that, okay? These are things that average Joe doesn't think about.
Or just an overall decrease in our ridership. I sit a little bit befuddled at making sure that the steps that we're looking at taking in the future actually will positively impact our numbers. It'll be interesting. I know we've got in the briefing today, Bernie's going to give us an update on kind of, the annual survey that we do to understand what the folks feel about us. And one of the things historically has been, on-time performance. So it'll be interesting as we continue to move forward to measure the things that we're putting in place to ensure that we're getting the results that we desire. But we've done a lot of positive things, and we've still seen. And now maybe that's the mitigating factor in the fact that we've seen a significantly decrease or significantly smaller decrease in our ridership than what folks have seen nationally. And those positive things may have contributed to that. But I'm fascinated by the fact that we've done some sweeping things, or in the sense of fares, we haven't raised them, which has actually just naturally over the last 6 years decreased the actual cost of transit from a real dollar perspective. I sit here again a little bit befuddled as to the thing.
All right, see how he just goes on and on. Look, Travis, if you ever listen to some of this stuff and you go on too much, make your point and move on. You do too much talking, okay? You're a smart guy, we know that, and you talk too much.
Things that we need to continue to do to ensure that ridership either, stays stable throughout this time or starts to increase.
I might just add a couple of comments to the list I kind of went through with you and what you just added on. So I thought you made some great comments. I think there's still work to be done, and often just when you fix on-time performance doesn't mean people all of a sudden show up right away tomorrow. Sometimes there's a bit of a longer lag. I do think we have unfinished work on our safety and security presence on the system. And I think even though our statistics show that people, you will see this in some of the attitude awareness survey today, they do feel safe and secure in the system. There's still some that perhaps don't. And I think sometimes numbers are helpful, they're directional, but I do feel that's a gap we need to be more robust at. So I think there's plans underway, as you know, in our budget, that will come forward to you to do things just like that. The other one that's in our business plan is also, I think sometimes you have to follow your instinct as well, where the data doesn't always tell you everything. And I think we need to look at some of our bus routes that are out there. And I mean, some people are moving, I believe, instinctively suburban to suburban, not just all lining up to come in through the spokes of the wheel into downtown central business. Yes, there's a lot of that, but I do think we live more of a pickup sticks kind of world, for those who could age themselves through knowing what pickup sticks actually are, where it's more in multiple directions. And so I think once we get the hot card in place, to me, it's far more than a revenue collection tool. Yes, it is that, but it is also a tremendous aggregate data tool that will help us on understanding true origin and destination customer points that will help us over time maybe look to realign some of our routes that we think are right, but maybe need adjustments. So,
I also want to point out that in 2012, they reconfigured the whole system. They just decided they were going to reconfigure everything, and it's been going down since then. Okay. I also want to point out that the cities that see the steepest decline in ridership are all cities that invested in light rail. So that's a very important point.
So I really do believe that will make us closer in sync to more actual volumetric travel patterns, not just individual ones. So I think there are some things, the safety, security, and those that would add on top, but I don't think those are short-term fixes. I think those are more structural, long-term strategies, as you see outlined in
He's not really saying anything. See how he's a good technocrat. He talks a lot, but doesn't say much of any substance.
business plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think Stovall's point is valid, and nobody, for some reason, they don't want to talk about this anywhere. I don't know.
And I knew he didn't know, before he didn't want to, I know you wanted to get down to the next issue, but I think this is important because all the things you said are right on. I mean, we do need to understand what's happening with ridership and where we want to go in the future. And I would just comment that I think Bernie's presentation will provide some insight, especially on the ride sourcing side, which is something I think is really interesting. And Doug and I have talked about it. If I had the numbers right, I don't know whether right, maybe Alan or Bernie could talk about that, but I think the city of Portland was shocked with the amount of revenue they received from their 50 cent a ride tax on Uber and Lyft. And my math, that was a significant amount of trips. I think the number was 6.5 million is what I remember, and at 50 cents, that
Yeah, now that's a tax I could support. A surcharge on Uber and Lyft rides. You know, that's reasonable. The only taxes I don't support are regressive taxes. That's like sales taxes, arts taxes, stuff like that. Okay, I do not support any regressive taxes. That means taxes that are levied on the people no matter what their income level is. I don't support any of that at all, ever, for anything at all, ever.
that my math goes about 12 million trips, or 13 million trips. So I think there's some things going on in just the lifestyle, technology, and other things, and I think the attitude and awareness survey gives us a little insight into that, but not a lot. And so,
The attitude and awareness survey was debunked by Opal, and you can check my blog, or you can check Opal's Twitter feed or my Twitter feed. I have a link to that bogus. We already know about those attitude, and I've looked at these for years now. We already know how they're worded and what they say and the kind of stuff. They're fakes, okay? It's fraudulent. It's government propaganda.
so I agree with you, Doug, that the learning where our customers are, what they want, and where they're going is going to be very important. But I think we're right on the midst of some big changes in terms of just the way people, travel as a result of technology. And so I'm looking forward to kind of exploring how we fit into that in a big way. And so this is a lot.
Technology is not going to bring the riders back. Okay, when are they going to understand that? People are not interested in all of this bells and they just want to get where they're going on time. Okay, in a reasonable amount of comfort. That's all. They don't need any of this technology. This is all pork, transportation, industrial complex pork.
Longer discussion, but since you started it, I thought I would follow up. So thank you. I look forward to that dialogue later.
Okay, thank you. Dee, over to you.
All right. Well, let's
Thank you.
let's cut this part here. Deep Brookshire is always interesting. We'll come back to that.